My new work has been released. Welcome everyone to read my work in tomato novel. I hope everyone can enjoy it. Your attention is the driving force behind my writing, and I will strive to tell every story well. Chapter 1. Time Traveling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the entrance of Midtown High School in Brooklyn, Manhattan, New York, it was time for students to go to school. However, students who were supposed to attend classes were all gathered near a fast food truck near the school gate, and even some teachers were queuing up. "Hi Lee, give me a Supreme Luxury Edition today." "Wait a moment, Teacher Milton. I saw a super big guy in the fast food truck who was 2.5 meters tall. He skillfully placed a semi-finished dough on an iron plate, beaten eggs, sausages, spicy strips, lettuce, and various side dishes. In less than a minute, a Supreme Luxury version of the hand-grabbed pancake was baked. Chingui costs $5. The speed of a strong man's meal is very fast. Whether it is grabbing or filling pancakes, it can be served in less than 15 seconds. It takes a bit of effort to make freshly made pancakes, but it won't take more than a minute. There is also a small man jumping up and down in the car helping. Quickly, all the ingredients were sold out, and the customers who had not bought them could only enter the school dejectedly. After all, classes were about to begin. In the fast food truck, the strong man took out $20 and handed a pre-reserved hand-grabbing cake to the small man who was helping. "Peter, thank you for your hard work. Hurry up and go to class. I'll just tidy up the rest." "Thank you, Lee. Are you still at Stark Tower at noon?" Of course, wealthy people's money is the best to earn. Little Peter ran into the classroom before the class bell rang, and then handed the pancake to his desk mate. "Harry, you should really queue up on your own. Handmade pancakes are the best when they're just out of the pot." "Oh, Peter, I also want to, but every time I come, the long queue makes me feel hopeless. Maybe you should talk to Lee and drive the fast food truck downstairs to the Osborne building. I believe Lee will make more money." "Lee is already doing this, but it's not Osborne, it's Stark. Lee will buy a delicious stir-fry under Stark building at noon. Yes, it's called Empty Bun Chicken Cubes. The Lee in their mouth is the owner of the fast food truck at the school gate, Lee Moo. Since this super big guy came to set up a stall at the entrance of Zhongqing High School a month ago, his height of 2.5 meters at the beginning, which was not easy to deal with at first glance, really scared everyone. However, within 2 days, Lee's fast food truck became the place where all teachers and students go every morning. In fact, Lee Moo is not a person from this world. The original identity of this body was Lee Mo, a gold medal thug of the New York Chinese Mafia. His father was Li Shizhen, an elder of the Dragon Kingdom demon sect. 60 years ago, a strong wind in the Dragon Kingdom directly dispersed all the ghosts, snakes, and gods, making this reactionary sect of the demon sect a resolute target of attack. When everyone else in the demon world wanted to fight to the death, Li Shizhen stole the treasure of the demon world, the Demon Emperor's Guide, and fled to Hong Kong Island. In Hong Kong, the old demon Li Shizhen met the woman who had taken him down for a lifetime, Li Mo's mother, who was not so beautiful but had a gentle personality like water. The father and son who arrived in New York, Li Shizhen, relied on his astonishing combat power to become the instructor of the Chinese Mafia. Although he couldn't teach real magic techniques, some miscellaneous techniques had already made the Chinese Mafia ecstatic. After all, in this era, it's not easy to learn real things by spending money in martial arts schools. It's good to meet someone who teaches real things. What kind of bicycle do you need? After Li Mo reached his age, Li Shizhen began to teach his son the true magic techniques and passed on the Magic Emperor's treasure book to him. He himself became a drunkard, an old demon who died drinking when Li Mo was 14 years old. Li Mo, on the other hand, relied on his magical skills to become the top hitter in the underground world of the United States. That's right, the short mule doesn't eat his brain and will be a short mule for his whole life. All of Li Mo's intelligence is used for practicing martial arts, and for others, he is just a silly person. However, with the proliferation of firearms, Liemo gradually fell from the altar. Unwilling to accept it, Liemo forcibly practiced the highly demanded magic skills in the Demon Emperor's treasure book. Without any unexpected hiccups, his meridians were completely severed, and his soul collapsed. At the same time, on Earth, Limu is setting up a snack stall on the roadside. Although it was the beginning of an orphan, Limu did not blame anyone and has been working hard. Although making money is not easy, Limu is always enthusiastic about helping others. On that day, Limu was setting up a stall when he saw a 5 or 6-year-old child suddenly running onto the road across the street. The truck driver on the road was clearly distracted, and Limu didn't know what was going on. Suddenly, his whole body was full of strength. He took a few steps across the road and pushed the child onto the sidewalk, while he himself was driven under the wheels by a large truck. Limu didn't expect that he would die hastily, but unfortunately, it shouldn't be himself who died. After Limu's death, he suddenly arrived at a magnificent palace, and he didn't know how to describe the place. He couldn't speak any language. An elderly man with white hair received Limu, and as soon as he appeared, he began to apologize to him. He clearly stated that this was the place in charge of the reincarnation of life and death. Originally, it was not Limu who died this time, but they made a small mistake in their operation. Under the butterfly effect, the originally damned 10th generation evil person did not die, but rather Limu, the 10th generation good person, died. If it were an ordinary person who died, it would be easy to say, but Limu, a 10th generation kind-hearted person, is different. Not to mention his merits, there are many big shots waiting for Limu's reincarnation to come to an end, throwing out his olive branch. Now it's okay, because of my own mistake, Limu's life was in vain. I originally wanted to send Limu back, but the truck was running too hard and my body was incomplete. How could I send him back? There's no other way, so I have to push the matter down to the old man. The old man also told Limu the truth. There are two ways now. The first is to immediately arrange for Limu to return to Earth for reincarnation. However, Limu is a virtuous person of 10 generations and died in vain. Reincarnation is the 11th generation. Not to mention that a virtuous person of 11 generations needs to overcome the calamity of heaven. Even if he died in vain, he will not be able to conceive well. The second is that the old man sends Limu's soul to a person who has just died in a parallel world and is reborn through the body. This operation requires Limu to pay all the merits as a price, and the advantage is that the old man can agree to Limu's 3 demands. Originally, other people could only make one request in this situation, but who makes Limu a virtuous person for 10 generations. If Limu does not want to, he will have all the merits, and no one can move him. After careful consideration, Limu chose the second option, and the old man was also very happy. After all, with the merits left by Limu, if he paid some more, this matter would be considered a thing of the past. Therefore, the old man asked Limu to state his conditions. After careful consideration, Limu realized that first of all, one must have strong strength, and secondly, one must have a privileged family background. Limu has had enough of the lives of the lower class. Since he can choose, he naturally needs to make arrangements for himself. Thirdly, Limu chose to preserve all his memories. Although this life was rushed, Limu lived happily. There were many people and things that moved him. Perhaps they would soon forget themselves, but just remember them. The old man was so pleased that he could only conceal his pain with a smile. The simpler the conditions, the more difficult it was to fulfill. Even if Limu wanted to become the son of the world's richest man, it was easy, but who made Limu's demands fall within the rules? The old man waved his hand and threw Limu's soul into a white vortex. After Limu's soul entered the vortex, an endless golden light illuminated the entire space of reincarnation. Under the illumination of the golden light, countless evil souls in the space of reincarnation were redeemed, and their black aura dissipated. Their ferocious faces also became incredibly peaceful, and they all knelt down to express their highest respect to the golden light in the sky. The old man never expected that Li Mu's merits would be so outrageous. If Li Mu had passed away, it was highly likely that he had become a saint on the spot. Thinking of this, the old man's teeth hurt even more, and then he reached into the nearby void, feeling even more painful. After some exploration, he threw something into the vortex, and when the vortex closed, the old man's expression immediately became much lethargic. Obviously, the previous operation had also caused the owner of the reincarnation space to suffer some injuries. Chapter 2. Fake Death and Escape. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At the moment when Li Mu's soul dissipated, Li Mu happened to cross in. Li Mu's situation met Li Mu's requirements very well, with strong strength. As a gold medal thug in the Chinese mafia, could his strength be weak, let alone his privileged family background? Although the original body knew nothing except practicing martial arts, his father, Li Shizhen, was a real old demon. The assets left for the original body were enough to live for several lifetimes. It's just that Li Mu really didn't want to join the gang. Although the New York Chinese gang was initially just a labor mutual aid organization, over the years, a good mutual aid organization won't become the third-ranked underground force of the U.S. Emperor, and a good mutual aid organization doesn't need a gold medal thug with all the magic skills. This body was originally very poor, with all its meridians broken and the sea of consciousness almost collapsing. However, when the old man brought Li Mu over, he quickly recovered and even elevated himself. When Li Mu first arrived, although the elixir field and meridians were empty, the elixir field was as vast as the sea, and the meridians were like a river. The dark injuries accumulated from years of practice in the original body were also easily restored by the old man. He even helped to open up all the meridians and acupoints of this body, even the most difficult two bridges of heaven and earth were connected. Although Li Mu lost all his skills after coming over, his cultivation talent was much higher than before. The old man not only repaired this body, but in order to meet the conditions proposed by Li Mu, he grabbed the void and directly robbed the pirate world, packing all the most powerful forces of the pirate world to Li Mu. All the top talents, including the giant power of the white-bearded, the steel balloon of the old lady, the recovery power of Kaido, the domineering talent of the red-haired, Kapu's domineering talent, Zeta's combat talent, the strategic power of the Warring States period, the swordsmanship talent of the Eagle Eye, the ocean talent of the Fish Man, and the culinary talent of Sanji, were given to Li Mu. There are also 3 color and domineering cultivation methods, various swordsmanship cultivation methods, various body techniques cultivation methods, gun-fighting techniques cultivation methods, food and medical secrets of the One Piece world, and so on. All cultivation methods of the One Piece world have also been passed on to Li Mu. The most crucial thing is the original power of the pirate world. Devil Fruit. The old man directly handed a purified tree of devil fruit to Li Mu. This tree species grows in Li Mu's soul space, and every time a devil fruit grows, Li Mu can obtain corresponding abilities without any side effects. Even if he is afraid of seawater, he can only eat one. Li Mu doesn't even need to eat it, as long as the fruit is hung on the tree, he can gain abilities. After receiving Li Mu's memory, Li Mu was speechless for a moment. This person was just a martial arts enthusiast, either practicing martial arts or on the way to fight. If it weren't for the arrangements made by his original father Li Shizhen in advance, his body wouldn't have waited for Li Mu to come. Later, Li Mu took out the Demon Emperor's treasure from the Sea of Consciousness. This was a purple jade plate, which not only recorded the cultivation techniques collected by the Demon Tao from ancient times to the present, but also the secret treasure trove of the Demon Tao. There was a huge storage space in the Demon Emperor's treasure, although it could not store living creatures, it was perfectly suitable for storing things in different directions. On the surface, Li Shizhen arranged some shares in real estate for his original body, but in reality, the truly valuable things are all in this space. In terms of money, gold, silver, jewelry, antiques, and jade objects are piled up in a mountain, as well as some anonymous certificates of deposit from major banks around the world and some tokens from private storage companies, fully demonstrating the cunning thinking of the three caves. In terms of weapons, it is enough to fight a regional war. There were all kinds of firearms that appeared on the market back then, including helicopters, tanks, armored vehicles, and so on. Li Mu even saw 3 Mustang fighter jets loaded with ammunition. There are countless other supplies, piled up like mountains of rice, flour, grains, and oil, various hardware tools, sports cars, sedans, and off-road vehicles. Li Mu even saw a locomotive. If it weren't for Li Shigan's clear explanation to the original owner, these were all purchased for 0 yuan, and he could believe that the original owner was the world's richest man. Finally, there are the things that Li Shigen left for his original body to save his life, a blue gold coin and a box of gold coins. The blue gold coin is the messenger symbol of the largest assassin organization in the underground world, the Continental Council, and the gold coin is the famous mainland gold coin in the underground world. With these 2 pieces, Li Mu can seek help at any mainland hotel. A jade plaque is a guest token of the ancestral home of Taoism, Longhu Mountain. The grandfather of the original body once fought alongside the heavenly master of that generation. With this jade plaque, the righteous path in the Dragon Kingdom will give face. A special medal, also awarded by the old man who fought bravely in that war. Li Shigen was chased to the end of his life and was not willing to use it, leaving it for Li Mu to protect his life. With this, it can really help Longhua step forward and save his life. A long tooth, this is the token of the Dark Council. If Li Mu provokes the Dark Council in the future, with this thing, he will not lose his life. A bronze ring, a token left by a group of mysterious wizards. As long as Li Mu takes this to 177, Black Street, he can get the help of those wizards. However, Li Shigen also explained that those wizards are a bit mysterious, and it's best not to go unless absolutely necessary. In addition to these, there are also many things with special badges, all of which are tokens of different factions or families. Even if one item can only be used once, as long as the original body does not die every day, it is definitely not a problem to live until the end of life. I have already agreed with the younger brother outside that no one will disturb Li Mu unless there are special circumstances. My identity really leaves Li Mu speechless. As an ordinary person living in a peaceful society, I have no good impression of the gang members, even if that person is me. However, it is too difficult to quit the gang, especially in the position of the original body. In addition, the emotional intelligence of the original body is not high. Whether inside or outside the gang, there are many people who the original body has offended. Usually, there are gangs leading the way, and the original body has good strength, so no one will trouble the original body. However, now Li Mu is an ordinary person who has lost all his skills, and it takes time for his golden fingers to exert force. After considering the current situation, Li Mu felt that he had to die again, but this time it was a fake death created by Li Mu himself. According to the original memory, there is a secret passage underground in this villa that was dug out by the original father alone. No one knows except for the father and son. At the end of the secret passage is a safe house, which has nothing to do with the father and son. Li Mu took out a large number of improvised explosive devices from the storage space, set the time, closed all doors and windows, and opened the natural gas valve in the kitchen. Then, without touching anything in the villa, he entered the secret passage alone. Li Mu crawled into the secret passage and blocked it with soil from the small world as he walked. When he climbed out of the safe house at the end, the entire secret passage was also filled up again. Not long after, Li Mu heard a huge explosion coming from the direction of the villa, followed by various sirens. Li Mu stayed in the safe house for more than a month, and after all the external disturbances had subsided, he spent a lot of money on the dark web to obtain another set of real certificates for himself. At this time, Li Mu's golden fingers had already started to exert force, and his original height of 1.8 meters had also skyrocketed to 2 meters, and his original appearance had gradually changed to Li Mu's appearance. With the new documents, Li Mu moved from the safe house to Clinton District and bought a 2-story small building with a basement on 35th Street. The basement is also a storage room, with a living room and garage on the first floor, a bedroom on the second floor, and an attic above. Li Mu lived here for a year, adapting to the changes in his body while restoring his original strength. It wasn't until a year later that his height was fixed at 2.5 meters and his weight reached 680 kilograms. His physical strength had already reached half of his original level, and he had initially mastered his golden fingers. He also gained the ability to chop fruits and rubber fruits. Later, when Li Mu couldn't sit still at home, he started his old business and bought a fast food truck. In the morning, he went to the nearby Zhongqing High School to sell breakfast, and in the afternoon, he went downstairs to various large companies to sell lunch. He didn't expect to earn much money, but what stood out was his lifestyle. Chapter 3. Tonistark. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 4. The Middle East that cannot be avoided. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 5. The New Director of Hell's Kitchen. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the afternoon, Li Mu returned to 35th Street and found 2 police cars parked outside Alvin's restaurant. There were also a lot of people watching outside, and Li Mu casually mentioned an acquaintance. "Hi buddy, what's going on inside?" "Oh, Li, a new police chief is coming to our Hell Kitchen." Later, Li Mu also learned that today is the new police chief in Clinton District, and George, the director of the New York Federal Bureau, brought her to Alvin's place to worship the doc. After all, Alvin monopolized 3 streets with strong strength and was elected as the principal of a community school based on the legendary story of all the black bosses in Hell's Kitchen. It has spread throughout Hell's Kitchen, meaning that Alvin will not develop gangs, otherwise Alvin will immediately replace Kim and become the true godfather of Hell's Kitchen. However, in fact, everyone now thinks Alvin is the troublemaker of Hell's Kitchen, but Alvin himself does not recognize it. At this moment, a female police officer with a metal arm and 2 police officers walked out of the restaurant with a look of regret. When they saw Li Mu, they instinctively wanted to pull out a gun, but were directly held down by the 2 police officers beside them. "Hi Li, this is our new director, Officer Misty. She hasn't seen you before and has a bit of a stress response." "Hi Sandy and Sam, I won't take it to heart, but you have to advise Officer Misty that she can't stay in the Hell Kitchen like this." "To be honest, did she offend her boss?" Cough, Officer Misty is just a normal transfer. Sandy's explanation didn't make everyone believe it, instead it seemed a bit darker and darker. "Don't worry, we all know, but Sandy, you should introduce the new director to the Hell Kitchen. Life is rare for everyone now, don't let her mess it up." "We will, Lee. We need to leave first. When will you go to the police station to set up a stall?" "We will definitely support you." Sandy returned to the police car, and Sam was in the driver's seat with a helpless expression on his face, gesturing for Sandy to look behind him. Misty was completely devastated. "I always feel like I'm an idiot today. Everything here is different from what I thought. I was even prepared to die in battle just now, but now you're telling me that such a creature is actually an ordinary fast food truck owner." Sandy listened to Misty's fragmented thoughts and knew that today's gift had a huge impact on her, but Misty was indeed a good police officer. "Director, I think you need to get to know the Hell Kitchen again, especially on 34th to 36th Streets. This place is different from 3 years ago. Although it is still filled with gang members, addicts, prostitutes, and robbers, now there is order here. Everyone has to follow the rules here, and the police are no exception. If we want to enforce the law, we must follow the procedures. Criminals may resist, but there will definitely be no more incidents of killing the police's entire family. Director, I think you need to take off your police uniform and chat with the people here. Perhaps you will find that this place is not so bad. Previously, people here had no choice, but now they have another choice. This choice brings them hope and also encourages them to start trying a normal life. The conversation in the police car was unknown to Li Mu. After Sandy left, Li Mu was called into the restaurant by Alvin. Director George told everyone a strange thing. Last night, Tony Stark's assistant Peebo was attacked by an abnormal creature, and her bodyguard died to protect her. After investigation, the federal police found that the wound on the bodyguard's body was very similar to that caused by a legendary vampire. Director George came to seek help this time. Isn't a vampire a legend? How could there really be such a thing? Alvin's buddy JJ was full of disbelief. After all, no one had ever seen a vampire. Upon hearing what they said, Li Mu thought of something he had encountered before. If you're talking about vampires who have a similar appearance to humans, but are faster, stronger, and cannot transform into bats, I think I've seen that kind of thing in New York. Subsequently, Li Mu recounted the events he had encountered before. At that time, Li Mo met a beautiful woman in a bar. He thought it would be a beautiful encounter, but to his surprise, the other person wanted to draw Li Mo's blood. Li Mo put in a lot of effort to deal with the other person. However, from then on, Li Mo's heart was clouded, to the point where he was still a virgin when he came through. Upon hearing Li Mu's account, Alvin and JJ exchanged a glance. That's Lanchef's bar, it seems I need to talk to Lanchef. After confirming that there were indeed such vampires in New York, everyone looked worried. After all, powerful creatures like Li Mu were difficult to solve that kind of thing, and if there were too many, they might not be able to withstand it. Alvin looked at the solemn crowd. What's going on specifically? Let's just bring two back to study and research. If it's really that kind of vampire, everyone doesn't have to worry. Humans have dominated the world for so many years and have not been replaced by vampires. There must be a way to solve them. Director George had a solemn expression on his face, and Li Mu returned to his own home. For Li Mu, vampires were a gift no matter how much they came. In the Demon Emperor's treasure, there was a magic skill called Fate Transformation. Previously, Li Mo used this skill to defeat the vampire and directly sucked it into ashes. At night, Alvin set off with the two executioners under his command. Before leaving, he knocked on the door of Li Mu and Lao Cheng's house. Both of them understood what Alvin meant and, needless to say, would also protect the women and children at home at this time. Alvin went out for over 2 hours before returning, and 3 woven bags dripping with tomato juice were also delivered to Frank's house next door to Alvin. The next morning, Li Mu was about to set up a stall when he suddenly saw Tony Stark in the restaurant across from him, who was boasting about Alvin's steak. It goes without saying that Tony's stinky personality was going to be messed up again. Sure enough, as expected by Li Mu, the miserable situation in the basement of Frank's house scared Peebo unconscious. Although Tony Stark didn't faint, he was almost spitting out his bile. After regaining consciousness, Peebo showed the calmness that a strong woman should have. After taking a quick glance again, Peebo confirmed that it was this kind of thing that attacked her that day. Now everyone knows that there are indeed vampires in New York, and there are still quite a few. Although Tony Stark lost face, he quickly became one with everyone. After paying a price of $20 million per year to exchange for his embarrassing video, Tony also became the honorary principal of a community school. Surprisingly, Tony and Alvin had a special conversation, and Alvin openly criticized Tony's countless shortcomings. Tony's ability to make money directly silenced Alvin. For a person with less than 6 figures in bank savings, talking to a wealthy person is the biggest blow. Finally, in the fight against vampires, the team reached a consensus. Tony Stark was responsible for providing weapons and equipment, and informing the public about the vampire incident. Director George used the power of the police to strike vampires throughout the city, while Alvin was responsible for cleaning up the vampires in the Hell Kitchen. Li Mu, on the other hand, accepted Tony's invitation and went to the Stark building more often when he had free time to avoid Tony's lair being stolen by vampires. Of course, the main purpose was to protect Peebo. Everyone could see their thoughts clearly, but neither of them had figured out how to break through this layer of window paper. Chapter 6. Rescue of Tonistark. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Alvin's action was quick. He made a phone call and gathered all the black bosses in Hell's Kitchen together, then caught a vampire and revealed it. All the black bosses in Hell's Kitchen immediately united the front line. As for the landchef who worked for the vampire, Jean would not make him regret coming to this world. Li Mu was not idle either. Apart from selling breakfast at the entrance of Zhongqing High School every day, he spent the rest of his time setting up a stall near Stark Building, occasionally scanning the entire building with his sight and smell. Tony Stark had already informed him in advance, and if Li Mu was willing, he could even camp on the lawn in front of Stark Building. The hunting operation against vampires initiated by the Hell Kitchen has also angered the Blood Clan elders. Although the deaths were mostly of mixed race and blood slaves, the number of pure-blood vampires is too small, and 99% of the entire Blood Clan is mixed race and blood slaves. So the high-ranking members of the Blood Clan sent the famous mixed-race vampire Prince Dracula to negotiate in the Hell's Kitchen, and also found the Divine Shield Bureau as an intermediary. The Divine Shield Bureau also attached great importance to this negotiation, and director Nick Fry accompanied his confidant Coulson personally. Li Mu happened to go home to get something, and at the height of the negotiations, Alvin was abusing Dracula with 2 old executioners, while the legendary most powerful vampire prince was like a dismembered pig on a chopping board. Seeing Li Mu looking at the scene inside in confusion, Alvin kindly explained the current situation for him. When Li Mu appeared, Nick Fury and Coulson also broke out in cold sweat. Li Mu's unintentional domineering aura made them feel like they were being targeted by top predators, and their bulletproof suits and firearms at their waist couldn't give them any sense of security. Isn't Dracula a duck? Li Mu is really not joking. In this world, the reputation of vampire Prince Dracula is not as great as that of Duck Dracula. After all, the latter is a happy childhood for many children. Look, I just said Dracula is a duck. Alvin joked and didn't forget to poke the silver-plated knife into Dracula's throat, causing him to scream and swallow it. Although Dracula was difficult to kill, solving it was not a difficult task for everyone present. It was just that after talking alone for a while, Nick Fry and Alvin decided to let Dracula go. Although Dracula cannot die, it is just that he cannot die. The 2 old executioners directly dismantled Dracula into parts and drained all his blood. When Dracula arrived, he was 1.8 meters tall and looked like a gentleman. When he went back, he simply put it in a garbage bag and brought it back. Alvin and Nick Frieda reached an agreement, and Nick Frieda ensured that vampires would not appear near the Hell's Kitchen and Stark Tower, while Alvin no longer expanded his scope of targeting vampires. Solved the vampire crisis, Li Mu no longer needed to protect Stark Tower, and Tony Stark also embarked on a journey to the Middle East. Just as if destined, although Tony Stark had Li Mu's reminder, not only did he make some preparations, but he also secretly found some tales. However, the vampire incident diverted Tony's attention, and after finishing his work, it was already the departure date. So there was no accident at all. Tony Stark was directly abducted by armed militants in the Middle East, and facing the vast desert, the U.S. military cannot guarantee the safety of rescuing Tony Stark, and it is even uncertain whether he is still alive. Stark Industries has also been affected, with a decline in stock prices. Some shareholders even want to kick Tony out of Stark Group, but Peebo has Tony's full authorization documents, which ultimately stabilize Tony's fundamentals. The U.S. military couldn't find Tony, so Peebo had to go to the Hell's Kitchen for help. Tony had told her that once something happened to him, Peebo would go to the Hell's Kitchen to seek help from Li Mu and Alvin. If Tony died, everything he owned would be inherited by Peebo. Faced with Peibua's request for help, everyone naturally took it upon themselves. Although Tony farted a bit, he was definitely a qualified friend. When friends were in trouble, everyone couldn't sit idly by. So, I'll go to the Middle East, Alvin. Please protect Peebo in New York and don't let Tony's house be stolen. Alvin directly instructed Jessica to protect Peebo, with JJ serving as the driver for a period of time, while the old executioner Frank went to investigate what was behind Tony's attack and kept all the dangers in the bud. Limu boarded the private plane arranged by Peibua and flew directly from New York to the Middle East, where he met Tony's friend Colonel Rod. Hello Lee. Hello, Colonel Rod. Lee, you can rest overnight at the campsite. Tomorrow, I will arrange a team to follow you to find Tony. No need, Colonel Rod. Just give me a Hummer and fill the car with fuel. Limu's frankness made Rod a bit embarrassed, but Rod didn't refuse either. After all, it was all for Tony. Limu drove a Hummer on the desert and Gobi in the Middle East. According to Rod's investigation results, the attackers were likely professional KB militants in the Middle East, and their bases were located in mountainous areas that satellites could not scan in detail. Therefore, Limu focused on searching these mountainous areas. Although satellite scanning cannot detect whether there are people hidden in the mountains, Limu can do it. Limu directly condenses the aura of seeing and hearing into a bundle, and the scanning range is tenfold. Every time he reaches a mountainous area within a 3-kilometer range, he only needs to scan once, and he can find out how many ants there are. Finally, on the third day of Limu's arrival in the Middle East, after scanning the fifth gathering place of armed militants, he discovered Tonistark in a cave. The other party was in a very bad condition, with a large hole in their chest and a device connected to a car battery. If Limu hadn't seen Tony still moving, he might have thought Tonistark had hung up. After finding Tony, Limu stopped his Hummer in the distance and headed straight towards the base of the armed militants. Tony was chatting with Ethan in the cave, and compared to Ethan's decadent expression, Tony didn't feel much. During this time, Tony had already thought of a way to leave, and the top priority was to get this car battery fixed first. With Ethan's help, Tony relied on simple tools in the cave to complete the first generation of miniature arc reactors. As soon as the reactor was installed, the two of them heard gunfire outside, but it only went off for a while before stopping. The two people in the cave looked at each other and then heard a knocking at the door. Tony, are you inside? Lee. Tonistark listened to the familiar voice and was overjoyed. Limu tore open the iron door and bent down into the cave, looking at Tony with a messy beard in front of him with an indescribable expression. Tony, your current taste reminds me of canned herring. I can go to your place. If you come a little later, I'll leave on my own. Tony walked over quickly and gave Limu a hug, but the height difference between the two gave Tony a feeling of being a little bird. Lee, this is Dr. Ethan, who was also arrested here. If it weren't for Ethan, I would really have died here this time. Hello Dr. Ethan. Ethan looked at the tall Limu with a shocked expression on his face. Hello. Limu led the two of them to the outside of the cave, and the bloody scene that caught their eyes made them feel a bit nauseous. The armed militants in the entire camp were not completely dead, and the ground was as if it had been heavily bombed, with potholes everywhere. The 3 armored vehicles in the camp were also neatly split in half. Thinking of the spotless Limu, Tony thought that Limu's strength might be very strong. After all, his size was there. However, he did not expect Limu to be so strong that he could confront a heavily armed company head-on and achieve an overwhelming victory. Limu brought the two of them to a helicopter. I deliberately kept a helicopter. If no one knows how to drive it, then we'll have to drive back. Tony looked at the logo of a company on the helicopter, as if he had eaten a fly. He didn't expect that the weapons he produced for maintaining peace would actually fall into the hands of KB members. I'll do it. Ethan noticed that Tony's emotions were a bit off and walked into the driver's seat on his own. On the helicopter, Tony asked Limu through intercom. Lee, have you seen how many Stark's weapons have fallen into the hands of KB members along the way? Lee Mu looked at Tony in surprise. What's going on? There are quite a few, but not just Stark Industries weapons. The people here don't have the industrial ability to produce weapons, and all their weapons are bought from various countries. Stark, Hammer, Osborne, Thor, Loma, and General Motors don't have any of them. Lee Mu's words plunged Stark into contemplation. The speed of the helicopter was very fast. Lee Mu ran for 3 days and the helicopter arrived at the U.S. military camp in less than 2 hours. When he saw Tony, Rod excitedly gave him a hug. Tony looked very tired. After chatting with Rod for a while, he got on the private plane. On the plane, Tony called Pebble to report that he was safe. The two of them spent hours on the phone kanji. When the plane landed at a private airport in New York, I saw Peebo and Alvin waiting outside. Everyone gathered for a simple meal at the restaurant next to the airport, and Tony solemnly expressed gratitude to Ethan, Lee Mu, Alvin, and others. After dinner, Tony and Peebo left. Ethan refused Tony's invitation and instead followed Alvin to the community school. Lee Mu also returned to his own home. Chapter 7. Treating Tony. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 8. Tony's Trick. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. How to solve the problem of no one being able to make decisions for Tony in Obadia. Hell's Kitchen welcomes the most important day of the year, the ATC exam for senior students. This is the most important exam since Alvin became the principal of a community school. It is not only related to the future of nearly 100 students, but also to the future of the entire Hellish Kitchen. Not only are all faculty members looking forward to the exam results of their students, but the entire Hell's Kitchen is also looking forward to it. Everyone wants to see if learning can change the future of future generations. As for themselves, the future is no longer important to them. After all, it's hard to say whether there is a tomorrow or not. During this period, Alvin named it Hell's Kitchen Exam Week, and the entire Hell's Kitchen is creating a comfortable exam environment for hard-working students from top to bottom. All the illegal and criminal activities in the Hell Kitchen have disappeared from the public eye, and all the black bosses have jointly issued a statement that as long as they do not come to cause trouble within this week, they are willing to give a fracture price for future transactions. The day of the exam came soon, and under the gaze of everyone in the Hell Kitchen, 3 school cars drove all the students towards the exam venue, everyone anxiously waiting for the exam results. Alvin, I think you should prepare for a grand celebration. This year's exam questions are even simpler than I thought, and we are likely to create a miracle. Professor Cage, who looked more like a cowboy than a teacher in the restaurant, excitedly told Alvin about his prediction. Really, old Cage, don't tease me. Don't worry Alvin, your efforts deserve the best reward. Professor Wilson, who is handsome and elegant, confidently said. Although the ATC exam is important for the Hell's Kitchen, it is just as important for this world. After struggling, Tony Stark officially announced at a press conference that he would shut down Stark Industries' weapons division, causing a huge uproar. The arms business accounted for a considerable proportion of Stark Industries, and shutting down the weapons division was equivalent to directly beheading Stark Group. After the news was released, the stock price of Stark Industries plummeted sharply, and the shareholders of the group also began to challenge Tony, preparing to drive him out of the group. But Tony hasn't been idle for a while. After the shareholders started to raise questions, with the help of a mysterious shareholder, Pepper grabbed Tony's authorization and quickly reclaimed all the shares held by shareholders except for Obadia. Obadia also felt the crisis, and his actions were not difficult to investigate. It was just that no one had the intention to investigate before, and now Tony has authorized Peebo to start investigating. The name of Pepper in Peebo is not a vegetarian either. Obadiah's hidden methods are nothing here in Peebo, and he quickly caught Obadiah's tail. Now there is only substantial evidence left. Obadiah naturally didn't want to sit idly by. Tony had already completed the design of the first generation of steel armor with Dr. Ethan in the cave, but before construction began, he was rescued by Limu. No one paid attention to the design at the time, and it unexpectedly fell into Obadiah's hands. Although Obadiah has a battle armor design, the core arc reactor is not something that anyone can build. Without an arc reactor, steel armor is just a model, and even the most advanced batteries cannot support long-term battles with steel armor. The arc reactor Obadiah had an idea, and what left Obadiah at a loss were Tony's poor friends, vampires, and the plight of the campsite. Obadiah knew it all, and he was really at a loss for that ability beyond ordinary people's understanding. However, adhering to the idea that the enemy of the enemy may be friends, Obadiah contacted the vampires and, with the help of the vampires, the Hand Alliance. The three parties agreed that the vampires and the Hand Alliance would help Obadiah solve Tonistark and his group of friends, while Obadiah needed to share the technology of steel armor with them and provide them with enough arc reactors. It's not that they don't want the arc reactor technology, it's just that Obadiah isn't stupid enough. Compared to the arc reactor, steel and armor don't count, physical objects can be provided, and technology can't even be imagined. It's not that Obadiah surrenders to Tony. With their relationship, Obadiah doesn't believe Tony will take his own life, at most losing power and wealth. When Obadiah was preparing another surprise for Tony, Tony was still addicted to what his father had left for him. The mysterious shareholder who helped Tony, as mentioned earlier, was the Divine Shield Bureau. After the Divine Shield Bureau helped Tony recover his shares, they also brought over the things that Howard Stark had left for Tony. Tony discovered a new element design from those things, which is likely to be the most suitable fuel for the arc reactor. After undergoing a series of renovations in his private laboratory, Tony finally found the most precious thing left to him by his father. A new element containing enormous energy without any radioactivity. The appearance of this element is enough to change the energy structure of the entire world. Once mass-produced, it can bring unlimited clean energy to the whole world. And the output power of the new element reactor is thousands of times that of the previous palladium element reactor. When designing the steel armor, Tony deleted many things, but now it is completely unnecessary. Even if all of them are installed, the output power of the new element reactor is more than enough. On this day, Tony had just completed the steel battle armor designed based on the new element reactor. Tony was about to fly around when Obadiah suddenly arrived at Tony's villa. Tony wanted to contact Peebo to see what was going on, but couldn't reach him. Communication throughout the area was cut off. Tony could only come to the living room and flirt with Obadiah, but he didn't expect that Obadiah had no intention of pretending to him anymore. He directly used a mental blockade device to make Tony a vegetative person in a short period of time. Tony, like your father, you are both idealists, and idealists usually have no good ending. You have weapons that can change the world, but you deceive yourself into being a good person. Tony, watch how I use your plan to conquer this world. After Obadiah finished his victory speech, he took away Tony's first-generation palladium reactor as a collectible. On the Stark Group side, Peebo took advantage of Obadiah's absence and found evidence in his office computer that Obadiah had sold weapons to KB members, as well as some other evidence that could keep Obadiah in prison for a lifetime. Peebo originally intended to send evidence to Tony, but all communication signals in Stark Building were cut off, and Peebo immediately realized that the building had been invaded. As the security supervisor of Stark Industries and Tony's personal bodyguard, Happy also noticed something was wrong in the building. Suddenly, many strangers came to the group, all of whom were still holding Obadian authorization. Happy felt something was wrong and immediately activated the highest defense system of the building. Tony personally designed it, and Happy had the permission to activate it, but after activating it, only Tony had the permission to close it himself. After Happy activated the defense system, all the employees in the building immediately followed the training and arrived at the safety houses on each floor, waiting for the defense system to be lifted before coming out to work. After obtaining evidence, Pablo was chased by intruders and had no way to escape. Fortunately, when he was about to be caught, Happy arrived with Tony's bodyguards. Although the intruders were all elite members of the Hand Union, these bodyguards were also retired from the elite special forces of the U.S. Emperor. In addition, none of the Hand Union members brought their best swords and hidden weapons, and they fought evenly for a while. After receiving the reactor, Obadiah immediately arrived at the factory next to the Stark building. The scientists who were bribed by Obadiah had already completed the construction of the Iron Overlord. When Obadiah arrived, he inserted the reactor into the reserved interface, and the cold Iron Overlord came to life immediately. The effect of this Kung Fu nerve blocker has come to an end. After Tony recovered, he immediately contacted Peebo, but not only Peebo, but everyone in the entire Stark building couldn't be reached. Tony immediately put on Mark III, who had just been taken off the production line, disregarded Jarvis's obstruction, broke through the roof and flew out. Chapter 9. Iron Overlord. You are listening at novelfull.audio. That night, Li Mu drank some wine and was ready to rest. Suddenly, a warning came to his mind. Li Mu took the initiative to use his aura to sweep around Li Mu's house and Alvin's restaurant, and a group of Karami unexpectedly surrounded them. Li Mu was still thinking about whether to remind Alvin or not, but when Wen-sei swept to Alvin's side, they were all prepared. Jessica and her 2 children hid in an all-metal shelter, and Alvin, JJ, and Frank were ready to fight. Not only did Li Mu and Alvin discover enemies on their side, but also Lao Cheng's family. Aunt Cheng and Yaowen hid in the basement, and Lao Cheng stood behind the door with an alloy rod, ready to rush out at any time. Dad's antique shop, Chen's dad, and Jack were also ready to help at any time. Even old Kent placed his hand on the mechanism controller in the room, ready to turn it into a bunker at any time. It can be said that the infiltration of these little Calamus has completely failed. In the Hell's Kitchen, what is never lacking is vigilance. Who doesn't have many mechanisms to prevent enemy invasion? Even if you sleep at night, weapons are always placed in a place that can be touched at any time. It's not good that Li Mu didn't wait for the enemy to come and damage the house. In the area of Hell's Kitchen, insurance companies don't accept insurance, and all losses have to be borne by himself. Li Mu came straight to the street with a huge mo knife, armed with a powerful aura that wrapped around his body. Seeing and hearing the aura, he accurately targeted each enemy, and then the aura targeted and suppressed them, shaking out all nearby enemies. If you don't sleep at night and come to the kitchen in hell to die, have you never been beaten by a gang, or is it not worth it in this world? At first glance, there was no chance of the surprise attack, and the leader immediately issued a strong order to kill. Countless hidden weapons and bullets rushed towards Li Mu for a moment, but in the face of such attacks, Li Mu was too lazy to move. Even without armed and domineering aura, he could ignore these attacks solely by relying on his physical fitness. Steel balloons were not just for fun. The neighbors around wouldn't watch Li Mu being attacked. Although a group of Karami surrounded Li Mu, they were also surrounded by Li Mu's group of neighbors. Although Li Mu's group of neighbors were scattered soldiers, they couldn't resist many of their skilled brothers. JJ and Frank won't talk about it anymore. They are 2 old executioners who kill the whole family without changing their faces. Alvin can easily kill all directions with just a few summoning beasts. He is old and dressed in ancient dragon martial arts, and can beat people into quails with just one stick. The father and father are not simple either. One knows magic and the other knows martial arts. Even old Kent has a home with firepower comparable to a fortress. Other neighbors are not simple either, Robert with a sand eagle and a hammer, Wesley with 2 pistols playing with flowers, Park with 2 samurai swords able to kill through a street, and old Marvin who can play with bombs easily. It can be said that the Hell Kitchen is full of talents. Lee, Tony contacted you but couldn't reach me. He found me and the Stark Tower was also attacked. Obadiah also wore steel armor, and Tony couldn't withstand it anymore. I asked Saul and Dom to protect Peebo. Tony's place is up to you. Li Mu was chopping hard when Alvin suddenly brought bad news to him. As friends, the two of them couldn't ignore Tony. Alvin still had children to protect, and the most suitable person to support was Li Mu. I'll take Saul and Dom to start building right now. You guys help me guard my house and don't break it down. During this period, Li Mu awakened another demonic fruit, which was still a very powerful floating fruit. He called Saul and Dom over, and Li Mu directly controlled a piece of concrete road under his feet to fly. Flying in the sky, Li Mu took out his phone and immediately rushed in several missed calls, all of which were from Tonistark. Li Mu called back. Tony, are you okay? Fake, Li, have you gone to another planet? Wait a little later and collect my corpse. Relax, I brought reinforcements over. What's the situation on your end? You can't even handle an Obadian. Fuck, I didn't expect Obadia to get involved with vampires and hand clubs. Now I have a pure-blood vampire and a black-clad ninja on my end, 3 of whom hit me and 1. If I hadn't upgraded to steel armor, I might have been killed long ago. After chatting, Li Mu had already arrived near the Stark Tower. After sending Thor and Dom into the Stark Tower, Li Mu also arrived in the air where the 4 of them were fighting. The vampires and black-clad ninjas moved too fast, and the Iron Overlord was good. He slowed down like an iron fool. Tony, stay away. I'll show you a heavenly justice. Li Mu went directly over 1,000 meters above the 4 of them, saw and heard the aura of the color domineering and locked onto the Iron Overlord. Then, armed with the color covering his entire body, he accelerated his descent and quickly broke through the speed of sound, bringing a series of Mach rings to reach the Iron Overlord's head. Obadia inside the Iron Overlord has detected Li Mu in the sky through the system, but he has been locked in by Li Mu with his aura and aura. Although he has made some evasive actions, it is of no use. A distance of 1,000 meters is too short in front of 10 times the speed of sound. Boom! Li Mu, who was wrapped in armed aura and accelerated to 10 times the speed of sound, weighing 680 kilograms, collided directly with Iron Overlord. This collision was like a meteorite landing, and the shockwave destroyed all ground buildings within a radius of 100 meters, affecting buildings within a kilometer radius. Tony, with Li Mu's reminder, hit at a high place in advance, and the black-clad ninja and vampire were unlucky. They were directly blown away by the shockwave for hundreds of meters and didn't recover for a long time. After the small mushroom cloud dispersed, Li Mu jumped out of the deep pit that was smashed out, which was 20 meters deep. His body was not even scratched, and as for Obadia, there was no such person in the world anymore. Even the Iron Overlord had turned into a pancake. After Li Mu jumped up, the federal police and agents from the Divine Shield Bureau nearby stared blankly at him. He was still human. The impact just now was as powerful as the explosion of the micro-mushroom bomb, and the steel melted. Surprisingly, this person was completely unharmed. Li Mu stretched his body for a moment, which reminded the people around him that he was still in battle. The black-clad ninja took the initiative to approach Li Mu, preparing to use his speed advantage to hold him down. Tony handed it over to Stark to solve the problem. However, their little plan was not done well. Tony's battle armor was not equipped with equipment to deal with vampires, and he had no advantage in dealing with vampires. He took the initiative to charge towards the black-clad ninja, and the vampire wanted to stop Tony. Li Mu used the shaving technique from the 6 moves and immediately came behind the vampire, reaching out his big hand to grab his head. The vampire's soul immediately surged. You can't kill me. I'm a pure-blood vampire. If you kill me, the 13 clans won't let you go. SB, it was you who broke the agreement first, so we shouldn't let you go. Li Mu directly used the divine cultivation technique, and the terrifying magic technique transformed everything the vampire had into pure energy. He was sucked into the elixir field by Li Mu, and the vampire, who had been thoroughly eaten and wiped clean, turned into a pile of ashes. Coulson, who was dealing with ordinary vampires and ninjas in red, was about to say something when he saw this scene. He then looked at the big hole and swallowed all his words back into his stomach. He was living well and there was no need to die. Limu dealt with 2 enemies, and Tony also dealt with the black-clad ninjas. The Air Force attacked the army without any air defense capabilities, and Tony fired a few palm guns that exploded the black-clad ninjas into pieces. Only after dealing with the enemy did he drag his pitted steel armor to the ground. Chapter 10. Tony's Gift. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tony sat on the ground, struggling to tear off his deformed face armor. It seemed that Tony had just received an electric cannon. Tony, you're capsizing in the sewer. Thank you, Lee. I didn't expect Obadiah to go crazy like this. Originally, I thought as long as he was willing to hand over his shares, I wouldn't pursue anything else. I didn't expect it to end up like this. Limu looked at the people around him. Tony, it seems you'll be busy next. I'll leave first. Limu flew into the sky and left before the surrounding police and detectives gathered around him. This battle was too much of a commotion. Not only were there so many witnesses around, but there were also many fearless journalists in the sky who broadcasted the entire battle from helicopter to helicopter. In just a short while, not to mention the United States, the rest of the world knew about it. However, for deceiving the people, the U.S. Emperor has a mature plan. Taking advantage of the ongoing heat of the incident, a press conference was immediately held, during which various forces were seriously fabricating lies. The huge battle scene was described as making a movie, and in such a short period of time, a crew was actually produced. 2 steel battle armor were also described as highly realistic props, and in the end, as long as Tony recited his alibi according to the prepared lines. However, Tony Stark has never been a conventional person, and it is even more impossible for him to cooperate in acting like a puppet. Steel armor has a different meaning for Tony, so looking at the script in his hand, Tony only said one sentence in the end. I am Iron Man. The resolute words instantly ignited the entire venue, and all the attending journalists rushed forward. They had too many questions to answer from Tony, but Tony, who messed up the reception, had already left with Pepper under the escort of the bodyguard. The next day, reports of Tony Stark officially admitting to being Iron Man spread throughout the world. At that moment, no one knew that a boiling era was about to come, and the future of the entire Blue Star also embarked on an unpredictable path. At the forefront of this storm, Tony changed to a low-key luxury car and brought Peggy to 35th Street. When they arrived at the restaurant, Limu and the others were drinking a celebratory drink. Yesterday, none of the little Karami ran away, and after the battle, they had a few drinks, focusing on a pleasant experience. After Tony appeared at the restaurant entrance, everyone in the room silently raised their glasses. To Iron Man. Faced with the ridicule from the restaurant crowd, Tony seemed to be very useful. Since he publicly announced that he was Iron Man, he has not settled down for almost a day. There are too many malicious people joining in. Only here, the only thing Tony can offer is that he is richer than the others. Firstly, I would like to express my sincere apologies for any inconvenience caused to you yesterday. Secondly, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you for mobilizing people to help me despite your own danger. After speaking sarcastically, Tony clapped his hands and the bodyguard outside immediately brought in several boxes. Without further ado, the meaning is already in my mind. Alvin, your old car should also be replaced. This year's Mercedes-Benz concept car will be given to you, and the community school reactor can also be built. I have already taken care of the new elements. Tony took out a bunch of Mercedes-Benz keys and threw them to Alvin, then took out another bunch of keys and threw them to JJ. JJ, your Dodge Tomahawk has already been parked outside, Frank. This is the prosthetic I made for Nick, enough for him to be 18 years old. We'll replace it later. Tony took out a high-tech mechanical leg from a box, aimed it at Nick's broken leg, and the mechanical leg automatically adjusted and installed it. After Nick became familiar with it for a while, he could stumble 2 steps. Jessie and Little Ginny's gifts, let Peggy take you to choose as you please, and my secondary card can be swiped as you please. Finally, it's Lee. I've got you a specially customized fast food truck, and this watch is the control terminal, much better than your current shoebox. Tony handed Lee Moo a simple and elegant metal wrist guard, with a dial on one side that usually displays the time. When Lee Moo needed it, it immediately became the control terminal of the fast food truck. These gifts were obviously carefully given by Tony, and the gifts he gave to everyone were the most suitable, making it hard to pick a single flaw. Tony, your commotion has made us all feel embarrassed. Alvin held the key to the Mercedes-Benz in his hand. How he liked it. For a man with just over 5 digits in savings, a Mercedes-Benz was something he couldn't even imagine before. JJ also looked excitedly at the key in his hand. This is the Dodge Tomahawk, currently the fastest motorcycle in the world. If he rides it out, will there still be time to rest that night? Frank watched his son stumble and familiarize himself with his new leg, and a big stone fell to the ground in his heart. Of course, if this son weren't so annoying, it would be great. Sometimes he was really afraid that his other leg would also be unable to be saved. Tony, the strength of steel armor is now evident to the public. You won't be easy next. I don't know how many people will be watching your skills. No need to go on, someone has already asked me to hand over my skills, but this is the American Emperor, and personal property is sacred and inviolable. As long as I don't want to, no one can force me to hand over my skills. If someone really did that, even if they offended the public, it would definitely not be me who is most anxious. So even if they want me to hand over my skills, they will only use some harmless means, and those little tricks won't do anything to me. Tony's statement is quite true. If it were an ordinary person, those capitalists could still seize it by chance, but for Tony Stark of the same class, all struggles must be controlled within a certain range, otherwise it would be undermining the interests of everyone in the entire class. If they allow others to snatch Tony's armor skills today, there is a high possibility that someone else will come tomorrow to snatch their skills and wealth. The world of capital is bloody, and once this happens, it is impossible to accept it. Then be careful too. It's best to wear a suit of armor and carry it with you. How many people are trying to save your life these days? Don't worry, I already have an idea, but what are your plans for vampires and hand clubs? It's not impolite to come here. The vampire's side was previously guaranteed by Nick Fury, but now the vampire has broken the agreement. He needs to give me an explanation. JJ and Frank from the Hand Club have been working hard these past few days. If we can find their lair, we can go together and catch some bugs in the sewer. If we don't beat them to death, we won't be able to get out. Tony came here mainly to thank everyone. He didn't stay long before leaving. After all, there were still a bunch of mess waiting for him on the Stark building side. The scale of this battle was comparable to the previous local conflict, and the aftermath was not that simple, especially the big pit created by Lee Moo's meteorite falling from the sky, which is now almost becoming a popular tourist attraction.